Hello, Coach Jason here with Chess for Anyone. Today we're going to be looking at the bishop. We're going to look at its starting positions. We're going to look at some bishop moves. We'll look at some bishop captures. And then we're going to look at some tactics with the bishop, forks, pins, skewers. And there's going to be one bonus at the very end. We're going to have a very powerful tactic. So stay tuned. Okay, so the starting position for the bishops, they start right next to the royalty here. So the king and queen between them, and the bishops are on the C and F files to start the game. And they can't move anywhere to start the game. They're blocked in. So we actually got to move pawns to get them active. Now I could free up this bishop because he strikes diagonally. I'm going to go ahead and move this pawn also. So now both players have a bishop that could slide across the diagonal. This is a pretty common opening move. Bishop to c4, bc4 attacks this f7 pawn, which is a serious weakness. Scholar's mate, you can check out my video on the scholar's mate, is done using this move as one of the moves. So this bishop is threatening right now to capture on f7. It's, of course, it would be black's move here. Maybe he does something like this. And the bishop could go ahead and capture that pawn. This is usually not a good move. I do see it fairly often because it removes your opponent's ability to castle, but it's just not a good idea. We shouldn't be sacrificing a bishop for a pawn. Even though the king has moved now and he can't castle, it's just not enough compensation in general to do so. So this would be an example of where a bishop could fork. So the bishop travels diagonally. He can actually move up here, check the king. So he's attacking the king and the rook at the same time. So all the chess pieces, they can move backwards and forwards. They can go up the board and down the board, except for, of course, the pawn. The pawn's the only one that cannot go backwards. So this bishop attacks backwards. It's attacking forward, attacking the king. Black must get out of check. He has to get out of danger. He has to move the king. And now this game ends up being a draw. And like most moves in chess, except for en passant, as we've seen, whenever you capture a piece, you actually land on that same square. So in this situation, with white to move, there's a fork that can be played. Both black's rook and knight are unprotected. And this is something we want to keep an eye on because tactics will arise, such as a fork. So you move one piece, it attacks two or more pieces, that's a fork. And the bishop is attacking the rook, it's attacking the knight. There's no way to save them both. Probably want to go ahead and save the rook because it's worth 5 points and the knight's only worth 3. Not that the points matter so much as just rooks are more powerful. They can really control a portion of the board where the knight can only control a few squares near it at a time and they're all of the same color. So probably go ahead and save the rook. I mean, maybe you sacrifice your knight for a pawn here. They take your rook. You end up losing the other pawn here. So probably just have to try to save the rook, and then we can go ahead and capture the knight. And now white is up by a bishop with smart play here. Want to get your rook activated. The king's going to have to get into the game, but white should have an advantage. Okay, let's go ahead and go to learn. We'll go to practice, and we want to look at pins and skewers, and Live Chess actually has some good pins that'll be helpful for us. Okay, here, so it's white to move again, and they already got it kind of, they're showing us the pin. So a pin is always going to be 3 pieces lined up, your attacking piece with your 2 opponent victim pieces, essentially. And so this knight is going to be absolutely pinned to the king. There's no way to move the knight because that would put the king in check, and we win the knight for free. We'd want to move our king up, and we have to promote that pawn. You can't win with just a bishop. So there's another pin here, if you can find it. You can go and pause your video if you like. But it's white to play here, and we want to line up 3 pieces. We're doing a bishop once again. We're focusing on bishops today. So bishop to a3 pins absolutely the rook to the king, and so we win the rook, and we should be able to win this game. Our last pin here on live chess. You can pause your video if you want to look for it. White to move. Yeah, we can actually pin the rook to the queen. So we're going to win the exchange essentially in that case. Okay, I thought we'd take one more look at a pin here. This is with a different website, though. This is Chess Magnet School, as you may see. So there's a pin here for black this time. It's black to move and win an exchange, which means change a lower valued piece like a bishop or a knight for a higher valued piece like a rook. So winning the exchange is winning a rook for a bishop. And there's a way to force that using this tactic of a pin. Pause your video if you want to check that out. But we can go ahead and pin the rook absolutely to the king, which is important. He can't move the rook because that would be put him in check, and we can go ahead and capture. Now, one thing I wanted to point out, highlighting the difference between a pin and a skewer. So a pin, we have the lesser valued piece, the rook, in the front, and the king is in the back. The more valuable thing is in the back. We're going to look at skewers here in a second, and it's going to be the other way around. It is white to move, and instead of a pin,